Hey everyone, the Talking Dads podcast is brought to you by Little Scholars Early Learning Center. Whether your family needs infant care, a preschool program, or before and after school care, Little Scholars' highly rated Step Up to Quality programs provide quality early childhood education at an affordable price. Visit www.littlescholars.net to get in contact with an enrollment specialist and schedule a tour of any of their 5 Lake County campuses. Here's the deal. Talking Dads fans are getting a little bonus. Mention that you heard about them through our podcast, and when you tour, and you'll receive $25 off of your registration fee. Again, that's Little Scholars Early Learning Center, where children learn, play, and grow together. We are also brought to you by FRATO GASTROPUB. FRATO was voted Best Gastropub in Cleveland in 2019 by Cleveland Magazine Silver Spoon Awards. We love FRATO. Their menu is chef-inspired, always pushing the limits of traditional pub fare. The other night I had a burger, I believe it was called the Pub Burger. It was incredible. Cooked perfectly. It was amazing. And you won't have a problem pairing your favorite item on the menu with their great selection of local craft beers, crafted cocktails, and of course, an amazing bourbon and whiskey selection. I went with the Bullet 10-year with my Pub Burger. All of this in a cozy, fun, come-as-you-are atmosphere. You can check them out at pubfrato.com and on Facebook and Instagram at pubfratogastropub. What's up, wonderful listeners? This week's episode features a blast from the past. Our buddy Glenn Forbes joined us via the Zoom meeting to talk about all things dad, sports, and, of course, the corona. We did get a little deep. We had a ton of fun, and we got to pick his brain dealing with this quarantine stuff from a news anchor or a journalistic standpoint. It was a great time. Enjoy, and please stay safe, my friends.
In a world where moms continue to dominate parenting authority and a father's role is minimized in society, 2 dads take on the toughest parenting topics on a weekly basis, all while drinking bourbon. They are the Talking Dads.
Yeah, man, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for taking some time to do this. It's cool.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man.
What we usually do when we start our little our show is we ask our guests to do like a dad profile. So just some like basic information, who you are, your kids, stuff like that.
Yeah, well, so I'm Glenn Forbes. Thanks for having me. Live in Westlake right now. Obviously, went to Mentor. Good to see you guys again and all that.
You too, buddy.
Yeah, man. Unfortunately, not on the golf course, but maybe we'll get back to that soon. So I'm out in Westlake now, and believe it or not, I actually have a 14-year-old daughter. She's a freshman in high school. And then I have a 7-year-old son. He's about to turn 8. He's in 2nd grade. So, 2 very different kids, very different challenges. Lots of fun, especially during this time with everything going on. He's up early. He's up all day. We're trying to get her out of bed. And that's just kind of the way it goes,
Yeah.
Interesting.
So with, like you said, trying to get her out of bed. So, like, for kids like her age, like, this is like even for your 7-year-old, this is like a big, long spring break, right? So, I mean, are they doing they're doing school and everything still, right? Like through.
Yeah. So they did school for a couple weeks. They're both on their spring breaks now.
Okay.
But they had a bunch of work, very different stuff. Because he's in 2nd grade, he mostly got worksheets, and stuff like that. But she's doing more of the Zoom stuff. She's doing more of the, whatever. She has a lot on Google Classrooms anyway and stuff like that. But, it's a lot more checking in and attendance stuff. And his is more like, worksheets, as you can imagine.
Yeah. I can imagine, man. Yeah. So, and then what do you do? So what is your profession?
Yeah, so right now I'm at the NPR and PBS affiliate in Cleveland. It's 90.3 WCPN is where you can find me most of the time. Sometimes I'll pop up on Channel 25 doing, roundtable stuff and things like that. It's under a company called IdeaStream in Cleveland, right next to Playhouse Square. It's a cool place to be. Although it's a little strange now, it's a little dull and everything. Yeah. That's kind of weird. So normally you love the energy down there, but right now it's just not the case. I was at WTAM for 6 years, sat next to Trevisano. For any of you who know Triv, it's a strange transition to go from Triv to NPR. Very different programs. So that's been interesting. And I also, I've had a couple different jobs over at Channel 19, and I still do some work for them occasionally, filling in as a sports anchor, if, like Mark Schwab or Tony Zarrella's out or whatever. So that's been a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Did you do stuff with 92.3? Were you on, I feel like I heard your voice on the fan.
Yeah. Yeah. So interesting. In this business, you either get laid off, you get fired, that's a lot of businesses, but especially, radio or TV and stuff like that. So I got fired almost 2 years ago from TAM. And then for 3 months, I was just doing either Channel 19. And then I actually did go over to what's known as Entercom. That's where 92.3 is. That's where WNCX is. That's where Q104, a couple of other stations are. I did mostly stuff for 92.3 there, but also did some traffic and whatever. I was just trying to piece things together until I found something, more full-time. And luckily that happened with IdeaStream, and I was able to get back with 19. So everything worked out. But yeah, I was with 92 for a while, hosted a couple shows, but mostly did the sports updates, that you hear every 20 minutes.
Yep. I kind of remember that.
Yeah, cool. Some cool dudes over there, talented guys and all that. Just like, pretty much any station you go to in town, it's a good market. The media gets a lot of crap. Some of it's deserved, but I think there is a lot of talent in this town and a lot of good places to listen to and get your content.
I don't have a ton of experience with a station or a studio or anything like that other than what we've kind of put together for our little thing. But what was it? January, I got to go to the iHeart Studios to record a radio commercial for the podcast.
Okay.
And I was just like, it was like a kid walking into a candy store, like we're messing around with our what we have, and we have some decent equipment, but like I'm going in there right. And I'm doing these takes, and I can't remember the girl's name, but she was kind of guiding me and like editing on the fly, and I'm like, holy crap, like these people know their stuff. It was just super impressive to see the level of professionalism.
Especially when, in commercial production, those people are like wizards in there. And if you think about it, whatever you do all day long, obviously you can see I'm not terribly technologically inclined here. I don't have nearly as good a setup as I should have. A lot of, media people do. And I'm just starting to get used to it. But yeah, I was spoiled. It's funny you mentioned that because the first time I walked into WTAM, into iHeart Studios there in Independence, I was coming from a much smaller market. It was in the Columbus market, but it was outside Columbus in like the Newark, Heath area, Granville, down there in Central Ohio. And it was very, small station AM, FM combo. And when I went up to interview at WTAM, it was that same feeling. It was, crap, this is a real newsroom. This is, they got all these TVs, everybody's working.
People running around.
Yeah. This was more of the real thing. And I was like, man, I grew up listening to TAM. I'm sure a lot of you TAM or MMS, or whatever. And it was great it's great. You're right. It's great to be in that building and see what they're working with too.
Yeah. It's pretty awesome.
So like you said, we kind of grew up listening to that stuff. Especially, Tribe Games, listening to Hammy, all that kind of good stuff growing up, and Triv forever, and Stanley, and all those guys. Is that kind of what got you? How did you decide that this is what you wanted to do? It seems like
it's
a weird...
one of the only things I'm good at. And even some people would debate that. But in high school, Steve might remember it. We did the Cardinals Cage. We had TV production in high school, and that was a lot of fun. Going to a school like Mentor is so big. They had they had some good resources there, so that was good to get into. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I think there comes a point in everyone's life where you realize I'm not going to be a professional athlete, right? That's probably not going to be my course. You know what I mean?
We all want to be.
It's always a disappointing realization.
Exactly. So I figured, one of the next best things, like you said, listening to Hammy, or just that excitement that comes with watching the game and listening to the announcers and things like that. The funny thing about that is I never really wanted to do I've done some play-by-play. I've never really wanted to do play-by-play. I always thought, talk show host, get my opinion out there, make a bunch of money. They don't tell you don't make any money until you get, endorsements lined up, and all that other stuff. And until you prove you can move product. I mean, I think sometimes people forget, you have to have talent, but you also have to have the ability to move product. That's really how you make, a fair amount of money in radio.
Absolutely.
And if you don't do that, you're looking for a middle ground, because most people don't make enough money to support a family of four. I mean, let's be honest. In radio, they've got to do that, maybe in some other things. So, you're looking for a middle ground a lot of the time. But yeah, I mean, I think I felt like I was good at it. I wanted to go to Ohio State to cover major college sports. I did that. And then from there, it was like, okay, let's see what I can do with this and how long I can do it for.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I feel like you got the good radio voice, though, man. I hear you on.
Did you just call him ugly?
No, man.
Dude, that's messed up. Don't treat our guests like that.
Yeah, that's what they say. That's what they say. Face for radio, but fortunately, I got a little TV stuff on there too.
Yeah.
People say I've got good TV hair.
You do have good TV hair, man.
Poof it up a little bit. I mean, so the face, what can you do? But I mean, at least the hair.
Hey, the hair's where it's at, man.
I can get it up there.
I'm jealous of those odds.
I can't grow the beard like Ian, though, man. That is impressive.
I just cut it down too, man. It was like down here for a little while, and I'm glad I cut it down not too long before right before lockdown 2020 happened. Yeah. I'm kind of glad I did, because it'd be out of control right now.
Put me to shame. Is it easy to trim that thing? Is it going to be easy during lockdown here?
So I'll be honest, I have not. So one of our good, Marco. I let the talented people at Marky Fresh always take care of what little I have up here, and then of course down here. I have not done it on my own. I'm terrified to, because I will just mess it up, and if I go babyface, it's not a good look. No one wants to see that.
It's the makeup for men.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly what it is. It's like makeup for men, 100%. So I'm gonna try and hold out until we can open up salon or barbershops and salons and see if I can.
How long is your hair? Look at this.
I mean,
that's pretty good.
It's getting there. It's been a while since I got a cut, so. But yeah,
Listen, man. The thing that I always try to say is that once you get north of 30, I mean. Yeah, don't complain about this. This is all good. Sometimes I get mad because my hair gets too long, it gets too shaggy and all that, but I'm glad it's growing.
Yeah,
yes,
100%.
Yes, absolutely.
100%. Some of us struggle.
Yeah, you're pretty thick up top there. You're all right.
Yeah, there's it's not what it used to be.
Yeah, well, none of us really.
But, right.
So Glenn, also you said you have a 14-year-old daughter.
Yeah,
14, man. So you're dad for 14 years.
Yeah, I'm doing the math there, man.
In the teens, man. Yeah. How are the teens with the daughter there?
It's difficult for different reasons than you may think. At least with my daughter, she is a feeder. She's an actress. She's a performer. She does not do the things maybe that we used to do when we were that age. At least
probably a good thing.
It's probably a good thing, then, right?
Probably a good thing.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. My wife and I talk about different challenges, and sometimes though it's weird. It's like I feel like that stuff I could understand. I can understand that stuff. Some of the things she does, I don't quite get. It's a lot of emotions, and again, I mean, like I said, she's a theater person, she's a performer, so that only makes it even more interesting. She picked up some bad habits. Yeah, she picked up some bad habits from her dad. She might have picked up some bad habits from her mom, if those exist. It's some of it is her personality, and that is kind of exacerbated, right, and multiplied when it gets into the teen years. Those parts of her personality that were more tolerable become less tolerable, but also the parts of her personality that, like her sense of humor is so developed now. She's hilarious. She watches The Office. She was, we can talk kind of on that pop culture level. So that's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a challenge, but not for the reasons you may think, and not for the reasons that maybe a lot of us experienced or a lot of us have thought about when we have girls of that age. At least not yet. I always knock on wood. I always say, like, her junior year, I've been kind of preparing for. I feel like that's when she's going to realize, the attention she's starting to get, and maybe,
Yeah.
It's just one of those. But it's just one of those things. She goes to Magnificat, which is an all-girls school, which I think is a help. But it's all, it's very different, especially during this time. If you're a parent of young children, you may think it's a blessing to have a kid that's in bed late. You know what I mean? Because those little kids, and especially if you got multiple, they're up early, they're in your face, they want food, they want. I mean, they just want. Once they get into the teen years, you've got the opposite problem. You've got to get them up and out of bed and motivated and ready for the world, and somehow get them prepared to function in society, which isn't always easy.
Yeah, that's got to be a struggle with all this stuff going on right now because, again, to your point, if my kids are sleeping in past 7 o'clock, I am so happy right now. Mine are 4 and 2, and as soon as they're up, they're completely dependent. So somebody, my wife and I are both working right now, kind of differently, but so we've been able to kind of stagger our schedules enough that one of us can be with them. But yeah, it's a challenge. 20, for the, I guess, I don't know, 16 hours, 14 hours that they're awake. I've been trying to put them to bed early. But yeah, I think that would be a tough challenge to maintain any kind of normalcy while they're just home and you can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, and it's two different. Even so, my kids are total opposites. He gets up early, and he probably always will. He's more of a rule follower. He's very conscientious. The thing is, though, he's still in second grade, so my wife has to get the stuff organized for him. And I don't want to say my daughter's on her own, but for a lot of this stuff, like, we can't check in for her. We can't do a lot of this work for her. So they are kind of just separate arguments there. But I think as you guys were doing the math, as you know, we had our daughter quite young. And so we were like, okay, let's give ourselves some space here. Like, let's see if we can figure out how we're going to have a career and a child, right?
Yeah.
Before we jump in and have a second child, which we knew we wanted to have. We wanted to wait, but it's an interesting dynamic, both of them being opposite and 7 years apart and all that. But it's been fun, I'll say that.
Yeah, they are fun.
Yeah, I can imagine, man.
I mean, they really are. I mean, we laugh about it and we joke about it, especially when the kids aren't in the room and it's just guys talking. Like, I wish we were in studio right now because I think the conversation would be a little bit more animated. But the reality is that's why we do this show, because it is a lot of fun and you do get to learn so much from your kids and you learn about yourself. I mean, especially you, again, doing the math. Like, dude, I was 30 when my first was born. So we're, me and Steve are kind of on the same timeline with that. So we kind of both went the route of, intentionally, I guess, trying to get a career going and get some kind of stability. And, not everyone can do that. Like, stuff happens, right? Like, I know that's how my parents were. I was born really early for them. And so I can't imagine having to go through that But then I think it's interesting because we've had some people on that had kids really young, and then they just kind of kept going and said, we're going to get it out of the way. And, so that's one route. And it sounds like you guys did the route of let's wait a little while, kind of get ourselves on track and everything, and then, grow the family again.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had 2 years of school left, both at Ohio State. And the funny thing was, I actually worked at a radio station in Ashtabula during that time. So that was strange. I did 2 years at Ohio State. I did the radio thing in Ashtabula. My daughter was, my then girlfriend, my now wife, was pregnant at the time. And we're like, okay, well, we got to go back sometime. So I only spent a little over a year in Ashtabula doing radio. Went back to Ohio State to finish. So yeah, we had 2 years of college to finish. And it's funny, we know that we're kind of like a statistical anomaly, right? A lot of
sure,
couple things that happens to, don't make it this long. Mm-hmm. That being said, we also had a lot of advantages. We had a great support system. My wife was very good at making sure that those last 2 years we were in school, that someone was with, my daughter all the time. We were able to kind of work our schedules that way. The funny thing about that was we ended up, actually, her brother ended up moving in with us too. As you know, the late teens, early 20s is kind of a crazy time for everyone. We felt like a lot of times we were raising our daughter, who was 1, 2 years old, and her brother, who was 18, 19, 20. Yeah. So I guess that
might help you out.
Practice for where. Yeah, it gave us practice with where we are, 14-year-old and the 7-year-old. But the crazy thing about it is, so we've always tried to take advantage of the fact that we had those advantages and say, okay, we have, we're more fortunate than a lot of people, so let's try to make this work for everybody, and that's kind of the way we've done it for the last 15 years. So we 15 in August. So yeah, it was crazy trying to finish school and trying to get a career start, like I said, in radio, where you don't make any money to start. So trying to piece all that together was interesting too, but definitely worth it. When I look at where I am now and hopefully where I want to go. So thanks to my mom and thanks to her dad and thanks to, everybody around us. As you guys know, I mean, especially at a time like this, everybody plays such a big role in raising your kids. I'm not going to say it takes a village. I don't necessarily buy into all that, but I mean, to have that great support system around you, aunts, uncles, cousins, good friends, and obviously grandparents, it's so huge for you and your kids.
Yeah. It's you realize how much you miss it when we're all separated.
Yeah.
To have my parents, like my in-laws, like to have people that were watching my kids and helping us out when we needed just a babysitter for a few hours or like for a day, or like just we get together, like my brothers and I, we'd get together with my dad every Wednesday and get all the kids together, and we'd all have like dinner and just get the kids together to play with each other. And now they haven't seen each other in 4 weeks. It's like, it's insane. So it's a complete lifestyle change. And man, I do miss having those times where I could be like, hey mom, I'm going to drop the kids off while I go run errands, or do something like.
I saw a meme or I don't know. It was a video of this like minivan rolling up to a house, and like the slide door opens and kids jump out and bags fly out, and it's just like me as soon as lockdown's over at my parents' house, like take them.
Yeah, man, so true.
Glenn, you said I kind of explaining your story. I think it's really good. It's kind of more of a unique story because, like I said, you guys kind of spread it out a little bit. And I think what's really important, especially what we try and do with this podcast, is we try and reach guys that, just found out that they're going to be a dad. And, some of these kids, they're kids, right? Like in their early 20s, late teens, and they find out and it's like, oh shit, how am I supposed to have a career? How am I supposed to do, the whole like my life is over type attitude. And, that's one of the things that we really try and bring home is it's not over. And in fact, I think, and you can probably speak to this, is having the responsibility of being a father at a young age would be, I would think, a catalyst to your own career if you let it be. You can certainly go the other way and be negative about it and, woe is me and everything else. But if you use it as, all right, well, now I have real responsibilities. I mean, shit, when I was early 20s, like I didn't have any responsibilities but myself. I think I got a dog, but that's a little bit different, of course. But no, I think it's a good reminder, especially to the young guys that find out that their girlfriend's pregnant, or whether it was planned or not. I think it's a shock to everyone, and it was a shock to us. I mean, at 30, it was a shock to me. It was like we were trying. It was like, holy shit, you're for real?
It's like, oh god, this is happening.
Like what? So I mean, I can't imagine doing it much younger, and then, like you said, trying to establish the rest of who you are, because we always say too, it's important to take care of yourself and be who you're supposed to be, because how are you supposed to? I guess in my head, how are you supposed to teach and bring somebody else up if you don't know who you are?
Yeah. I mean, you can't. You have to be who you want to be. You have to try to be happy. You have to see, what you're made. Any cliche you want to throw in there, right? You have to see what you're made of, test yourself, whatever. So, a lot ran through my mind when you were talking about some of those things. It didn't feel as crazy at the time, but as a almost 36-year-old, when you look back and you're like, we did this when we were 21. That kind of blows you away. But like I said, at the time, it's crazy, obviously. I think a couple things for me. I think I knew I always wanted to be a dad. And did I think I was going to be a dad at 21? Of course not. But when my daughter was born, it was the happiest I had ever been in my entire life. And sometimes you don't know, right? Sometimes, especially at that age. I mean, I thought we could do it. And when my wife was pregnant, she came up to live with me when we were still in Concord. And that was a great place for her to be pregnant, for lack of a better word, because parents were there. It was great. So we were off to a good start in that regard. But yeah, once she was born, and I was just filled with so much happiness, even though we had to go back to school and we had so much to figure out. I was like, I have never been happier in my life. And that lasts for a while until they stop getting cute and start talking back, which for my daughter was very early. But I would say, I would say to even the young dads out there, there are some wrong answers when it comes to raising young kids, but probably not as many as you would think. Talk to them about whatever, when they can't talk, from the time they're in the womb, literally. When your girlfriend is pregnant, your wife is pregnant, your fiance, talk to them in the womb, get them used to your voice. They talk about classical music. Take it as seriously as you would your career. Take it as seriously as you do the Indians, Browns, Cavs, and Buckeyes, which we all take very seriously. Mm-hmm. Too seriously. Take it as seriously as you would take your golf game. Have fun with it. I mean, even if your child doesn't end up being a great athlete or isn't interested in all the stuff that you're interested in, the important thing is to kind of expose them to all of that stuff, as long as it's constructive. It could be cars, it could be carpentry, it could be, anything. Talk to your child as soon as they're in the womb, and obviously when they get out. Read to them, become invested in it. Like I said, as much as you would in your job or sports. It is scary. It is nerve-wracking. You don't know if you're doing. Nobody knows what they're doing. Okay,
right. That's the point.
That's the most important piece of advice. Yep. And it's weird at this age now to think about our parents are like, shit, they didn't know what they were doing either.
Right.
we're all just flying by the seat of our pants. So that's the important thing to remember too. Nobody has all the answers. We're all faking it till we make it. But the important thing is showing up every day, just like you do for work, just like you do for anything else.
Yeah.
Well, like you said, put the effort in, and Steve and I, we say all the time is whatever works. So you can read every book out there, you can listen to every podcast, you can watch every YouTube video on how to be a dad, and the reality is every kid is different, and they're going to respond to you differently. And like you said, I think it's about showing up, and it's about putting the effort in, just like you said. I think as much or more than your career or your hobbies or whatever that might be, because it's the most important thing that most of us will ever do. And I truly believe that, and Steve, obviously Steve does too. That's why we do the show.
Yeah.
So that's cool to hear you say that, because I don't know if, especially in our generation, we're kind of in that mix, right? Like I know my dad was not like a hands-on father, like
Sure.
really great dude, and I mean he was hands-on when it came to discipline and stuff like that, but he was at work while my mom had me. You know what I mean? Like it was still
yes.
kind of that era. And today, it's just not. And so there's very few scenarios now. And like, so I'm in childcare for a living. So I get a good range of parents and different family dynamics. And it's just really not the case anymore where dad's at work while mom stays home with the kid. Like it's just not what people really do anymore. And so it's more responsibility now than ever that we take at least an equal role, if not sometimes a leading role, in the nurturing and the parenting of your child. And like you said, that starts, in the womb. Like we don't have the advantages that moms do of building that physical bond, prior to birth.
Day one.
Steve, we said one time, or I think I can't remember how it was said, but it's almost like, for lack of a better term, it comes much more naturally to women because it's part of them, right? Like your kid is part of them for so long. And like I felt like for me, I had to work at it. Like it was a concerted
it doesn't
thing.
become real for a dad until they're born, right? Until you actually physically hold them for the first time. You see them come out and you hold them for the first time. It's like, wow, this is real. Like, well, the woman is preparing from day one where they're going through changes and their body's naturally preparing them for it. Well, we're kind of sitting there like, oh, I still got another 9 months before I have to do anything. I mean, well, you got to take care of your wife, obviously. But I mean, as a father, and as Ian said, everything's so different now than it used to be. A father figure has always been a huge role in a child's life. But I feel like now more today, like Ian had said, it definitely is a lot more of a popular, it's a bigger thing now. And father figures are very important. A child needs a father in their life. So like Ian said, like when we do this is what we try to promote and try to, connect with people to make them understand and help us understand even more how important fathers are. And I think, it sounds like you have the right idea. Obviously, you're a great father. You have everything you said is like
spot on.
Great advice for anybody. It's phenomenal. It's dead on.
And thank you. I appreciate that. And I mean, I think you're so right in talking about how, the woman is preparing for it physically. We're more preparing for it mentally, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it's important to go through that with her. I remember telling a colleague one time who a little younger than us, but he was getting ready to have his first, and I said, she was pregnant during Mother's Day, and I said, "This is her first Mother's Day as a mother." I said, "Celebrate Mother's Day with her." It's important to go through that process with them, acknowledge that they are mothers. They have it much worse than we do. Right? Like
100%.
Our problems are different, and not to downplay them, but our problems are certainly different. So, go through that. Go through those 9 months or 7-8 months after you find out or whatever with your wife. It will teach you empathy. I mean, I never had a lot of empathy. I think anyone who knew me in high school who may be watching this probably, I didn't have too much. But I mean, you learn real quick. So that's one thing. And as far as what Ian was saying, like he could have very well been talking about my dad, and I think a lot of our dads.
Mm-hmm.
Great guys. I mean, really, really great guys. And we bond in our own way. We bond through golf, we bond through sports, business, work ethic, things like that. But my mom spent way more time with me than my dad. I mean, significantly more. He's an attorney, still practicing. He's got a small practice in Paynesville. He was working all the time. So what did that teach me? Well, that taught me, again, show up every day, go to work, stuff like that. I try to parent like both of them, but a little bit more like my mom, who's in education. So it's a good mix, right? But yeah, we're much more involved as dads. I think, I think that you have to be true to yourself and who you are. So if you are a sports fan and you are a golfer and you are those things, full bore, man. Talk to your kids about it. Try to get them involved. You don't want to push. You don't want to be a crazy dad about anything.
Yeah.
You certainly don't want to be a crazy dad about sports, but also, so be who you are, but also be willing to, expand your horizons. And the other really important thing, and I probably learned this lesson almost too late, I was probably a good father from the beginning. When you talk about, the young age, right, 21. So for anyone who's watching this who may be in their early 20s or mid 20s or whatever and are pretty freaked out, I was a good father from the start. I had to learn to be a better partner, right, and a better partner to my wife in raising the kids. And what really when that really sinks in is when you got two, because then the odds are even. You can't double team your one child anymore. You get two, you get three kids, you're outnumbered. It's like, okay, we really have to work together. We have to be better partners in this.
That's a huge part of being a father. I mean, I'm convinced.
Teamwork with that, man.
I'm convinced. I mean, it's and like again, not that I want to talk about coronavirus any more than we already have been like over the last month. But like this is a really good example of having to work as a team, man, because everyone's thrown off. Everyone's adjusting their lives. And like you just said, with multiples, it's a struggle, man. Like, well, I got to do this and I got to do that. And, we all have our own stuff, but at the end of the day, the kids come first. And so we have to adjust our stuff based on that. But I think you're right. I think that part of being a good dad is being a good partner, being a good husband, or, whatever you are to your significant other. Because, like I always think about too, I can't imagine being a single parent. Like, again, being in daycares and having childcare centers and preschools and stuff like that. Like, I mean, we have a lot of single moms still. And that is still a very real demographic. And I give them so much freaking credit. Like, I have a lot of employees who are single moms. And it doesn't compute to me. It does not compute how you could be a human being with your own ambitions and goals and everything else. And these girls do it, man. Like they're going to school and they're working and like, how?
Can you imagine every single day just waking up and getting your two kids ready, getting them off to where they need to go while trying to get yourself ready and trying to get everything done? My daily routine is so as a team is so easy. It's not easy, but it's much easier with a partner where I could help get ready and then I'm out the door and then she takes care of cause she works a little bit later than me. So she'll be able to take the kids to daycare and then mixing things up to where it works out. Like to do that by yourself would be insane.
There's no breaks, right?
It would just be unbelievable. Like right now, this moment, what we're going through right now, being by yourself.
Oh my goodness. Would be
unbelievable without being able to take them somewhere. I can't even imagine. And Glenn, I don't know. So, are you guys both working from home? I mean, are you going into the station still? How is your guys' daily routine right now with this whole thing?
Yeah, so I'm doing a little more working from home in the morning, and then my big part of the day is when Governor DeWine and Dr. Acton and Lieutenant Governor Husted go on at 2. I go into the station for that. Kind of unfortunate timing for one of my colleagues. He several weeks ago he drives like a scooter. It's like a mini motorcycle. It's not like a scooter, like you would think of a scooter. But drives this little mini motorcycle into work, and somebody was making a U-turn and hit him. and he was kind of thrown from the bike, and he ended up fracturing a wrist and messed up his other arm and all this stuff. So, and this happened pretty much right before shit got real, if you will. This was right before the lockdown. This was right before St. Patrick's Day and all that stuff was canceled. So just got into the habit of doing that 2 p.m. every day and then going on the news at 4:04 through 7 o'clock or whatever on 90.3. And so I'm considered, it's funny to me to be considered essential, right? Because what I'm doing it is essential in a way, but man, I'm sure as hell not a nurse. I'm sure as hell not a first responder. I'm sure as hell not a grocery store worker, a truck driver.
Right.
We try to get the news out the best we can, so people know what's going on. But we're one step removed, and honestly, that's one of the things that I like about it. You're inundated with it. You cover it all day, but you're not face to face with it. You're not a police officer going into these homes and dealing with these impoverished areas and things like that. You're not a nurse dealing with this surge. So I try to keep that in perspective. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm still going in every afternoon and furiously cutting DeWine and Acton tape and things like that. My wife does a lot of work at my son's school, which is St. Raphael in Bay Village. So she's off now too, obviously, and helping him from home. And she does a little bit of everything for them. She's a substitute teacher. She'll do stuff in the lunchroom. She's an aide. She's a valuable piece for them. But I'm so happy, and I'm sure Ian knows this. I'm so happy she has some experience in the classroom, because the way she's been able to organize stuff and make it visual aids for him. And he's a pretty organized kid anyway, like rule follower, like I said, but she makes it easy for him to get everything organized. So that's been the great thing about our setup. It's been nice to get out of the house. You look forward to coming home, right?
Sure.
I'm still going out every day. So I'm like, man, I want to get back home. I want to pour myself a drink. I want to play with my kids. I want to play video games when they go to bed. You look forward to coming home. So that's kind of been the nice thing about it for me too.
Good.
Yeah, for sure. Because I still going to the office, and the way I'm doing it is I work half days, so I go in at 12:30 every day. So for my wife and I, we don't like you guys, like Ian with the child care centers, your wife with the school. Like, we have no experience with any of that stuff. So trying to put together a daily routine is like it's foreign. It's like, so what we did was, like, when this all started, we had talked about like different people doing different things and coming up with a routine for the day. So we have like a list that we put out, and we said, we wake up, we're going to do breakfast, and then we're going to get dressed like we're going to school. Like the first week, it was like everybody's just sitting in their pajamas all day long. But it's like, let's try to act like things are still normal. So let's get dressed like we're going to school. And then we're going to do, educational stuff for an hour, or however long a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old can actually do it for. And then do creative stuff, and then have lunch, and then you have your relaxing time to play with toys or whatever. Trying to balance the day is pretty tough when you're not used to having to do that. When you usually send your kids off to school and let the teachers or the daycare take care of it. But for me, I get to go to the office. Like, I could leave for a few hours and clear my head and have like my time to actually think and do something else besides be at home with the kids all day. And I'm not saying like that. I hope that doesn't sound like I'm an asshole, because I'm like, I get to get away from the kids for a little bit. But honestly, that time is, pretty essential for me. My wife is home 24/7 for the last 3 weeks. So it's like, that's tough.
Yeah.
It's a big lifestyle change for everybody.
We get to leave. I mean, you're right. We get to leave, and that does sound funny, because several months ago we all would have said, man, 3-4 weeks at home would be nice.
Yeah.
Right.
But under these circumstances, it's not that way.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think everybody was thrown into this without really knowing what to do or how to do it.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's
like
no
I
blueprint.
said, even under normal circumstances, none of us know what we're doing. And especially now, none of us really know what we're doing at all. But, and so anything you can do, what you said, Steve, is so important. Trying to keep that some semblance of normalcy during this time, right? Just especially when they're little, especially when they're little kids, trying to keep them into that routine is really important. Some of your restrictions are going to break. Your restrictions on screens, your restrictions on junk food, your restrictions on whatever else. Some of that stuff is going to break down. But I mean,
Absolutely.
that's okay, because we're all just figuring this out and trying to move everybody along the best we can.
Well, and I'd say not only is it okay, but I've been trying to tell people that ask, like, well, what are you doing for a routine or whatever? And I've been encouraging, do stuff that your kids will remember.
Yeah.
Especially if you have, like my 4-year-old, for example, Gibbs, he's the talkative one, and he's manipulative, and he's almost too smart for his own good at 4 years old, but he tries to get away with things, but then he kind of tells on himself and all this kind of stuff. But I said, let's do some more screens, and let's take as much. He loves baseball, so every chance that we get, I'm going out and we're throwing pitches to him and everything. And then, like, the junk food, like, we're eating Cheetos at night, and they're, whatever, but we're doing it more. And I think that if there could be a goal or something positive to come out of it, is like, maybe in a couple of years we'll say, hey man, remember when I could stay home for a month with my parents, and we ate a bunch of junk food, and we watched movies every other night, and all that kind of stuff? Because at the end of the day, I think that bonding time, however you decide to do it, can really, I guess, enhance your relationship with your kids. You could.
That's creating memories for yourself too,
right?
Because as a parent,
right? Because I think what you said is right, Steve. Like Glenn said, is the structure is super important, because you have to maintain some kind of normalcy. But then, if you can kind of counteract that normalcy with some special stuff, because we can't go to the arcade, we can't go to like a captain's game or an Indians game, we can't go out and do those types of things. Like, we're limited to a couple. We can't go to the friend's house and go see their friends, and you're limited to a couple parks that are like halfway open. Certain sections are open, and then drives. Like, I took a drive with my kids this morning, and we just like drove around. And we were like trying to point stuff out, and my kids still didn't understand. Like, well, let's go in there. I'm like, we're not doing that.
Can't really do that. Well, and Ian, that kind of stuff, like you said too, is like, you went for a drive. We've been doing that too, like once a week, maybe twice a week, where we'll go for a drive. Like last week, we went and we just got lost. Like, we drove around for like an hour at night, like right before the kids were going to go to bed, which worked out because they both fell asleep, and it was easy to transition them to bed. But that kind of stuff I remember doing with my parents. And my dad like used to take us on random like adventures where we would drive somewhere, and he'd put like a book on tape or something, and we would just. I remember those stupid little things that we would do. Those things stuck out to me the most. It was like those things meant the most. Like going to like these parks and things like that, and like just doing stuff that I'm trying to do with my kids. And that's the kind of stuff that stuck with me, and I hope sticks with them. And I know, talking to my dad, those type of things he remembers as well. He's like, those were the best times of my life. Like, he was like, that kind of stuff we did was some of my best memories. So like, as a father and like even as a child, like those are the memories that will stick with you. So that's the important stuff. Ian, like you said, kind of deviating from the usual routine at the same time and doing exciting things. And I was gonna say this before. It was funny. I came home from work the other night, and Liz had made that oobleck, like that slime crap, and she sent me a snap, and I'm like, oh god, not that stuff, because I know where this is gonna go. So anyway, I get home, I pull in the driveway, and I open up the gate in the backyard, and I see Liz sitting in a chair on the patio, and she's just got a White Claw. And she's just sitting there, like, she looked like she was just at peace, like she's just given up. And the kids were just covered in slime, head to toe. The patio is covered in slime. It's just a complete disaster. And she goes, whatever. I'm like, yeah, hey, you know what? Screw it. I'll clean it up later.
I bet your boys will remember that, though.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like, dude,
they made a huge mess, and then they went and played in a huge mud puddle after they were done. And you know what? Whatever. We'll wash them off.
You got nothing else to do. Clean them up.
What else is there to do?
Get the hose, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. And it's a lot like everything else. It's a lot like I was saying in terms of being young and trying to raise a kid. Like, sure, we all know what some of the wrong answers are, but other than that, let it rip. I mean, no one knows how to navigate this. No one knows how to exactly get through this, and um, even during these press conferences, like I was talking about, the first lady of Ohio, if you will, Fran. It's so funny because Mike DeWine and his wife Fran, they're like the grandpa and grandma of Ohio. And anyway, like I followed Mike DeWine's career for a while, and I feel like this is all he's ever wanted, is to be Ohio's grandpa. And Fran is like Ohio's grandma, and she said that too. She said, just how are they going to remember this when they even my son who's 7 and 8? If you think back to when you're 7 and 8, you don't remember too much from that, but they're going to remember this. And the 2, 3, 4, maybe not the 2-year-olds, but the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-year-olds, they're going to remember what they did during this time, and hopefully you can provide those good memories when mom and dad were home more often. And hopefully we get some more good weather. And I know it's frustrating, like you said, with the parks and stuff like that. But I mean, my neighborhood is more alive than it would be, on a normal night when it's nice out, because people are trying to value that time getting out. Yeah. And whether it's riding bikes. I mean, I've never seen so many people walk their dogs. Like, I know everybody has dogs and stuff like that, but the street, I live in a big kind of residential development and things like that. And sometimes I'm amazed, and everyone's keeping their distance and stuff, and everyone's doing a great job with that. But the streets are packed for like a residential neighborhood, and it's been good to see. It's been good to see.
There's some positive with it.
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely. You've got to find the silver linings.
Steve and I talk about a lot on the podcast about how the 10 to 15-year-old kids, when we were 10 years old, we were on our bikes, sun up to sundown. I mean, usually before the sun came up, especially in the summertime, and we talk all the time about how you just don't see that as much anymore. But if there is a positive take out of it, man, I see teenagers and younger kids out playing basketball, or, like siblings going out, and that, like, there's 2 boys down the street from us, and they have turned their driveway into an actual hockey rink. It's amazing. And they're you're just like foot hockey or whatever, but like they're just running up and down, I mean, all day long. And I think it's so cool. I'm walking by and I'm like, great job, dude, whatever. Like, I don't know anything about hockey, but these kids are, you know what, man? They're putting the work in. I think it's really cool.
And you see that, like you guys were saying, like you see that everywhere, like a lot more now. Like, we were driving around the other night. We went and got dinner. We sat in the car and had dinner with the kids and kind of did something different. And then we went and we're driving around neighborhoods because Liz is always looking for a new house. She's like, we're growing out of this one, so just want to go drive around this area. So we went and drove around, and I'm driving through these neighborhoods, and there's a kid throwing a baseball up in the air to himself. You see another kid over in the driveway playing basketball. You see another kid dribbling a soccer ball in the front yard. These are like teenagers and or younger. And I'm like, I remember that's what I would do.
Yeah.
Like if my brothers or my dad or a friend wasn't playing catch me, I was out in the yard throwing a baseball up in the air.
Dude, you're in your dad's garage throwing the tennis ball across that back wall. I remember that. I would go ride my bike over there, and you'd just be sitting there fielding balls.
All day, man. That's all I did. And like, to see kids doing that now, which you haven't seen in years, and I think this will help these kids realize, hey, this is actually pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Like there's something else to do besides just sit in the house and just play on my phone or the computer or my video games. Like, I could get outside and do something a little more fun. This is actually, I mean, a lot of athletes, a lot of these kids already kind of do stuff like that, but not as much as they used to. Right. Not like as much being outside by yourself or with a sibling doing something outside. And it's pretty cool to see that right now. I mean, it's definitely a change.
Yeah.
For the better, I guess.
I think so. Yeah, this whole thing is, I keep trying to tell myself and anyone who will listen that for most of us, hopefully you don't have to go through knowing somebody that was seriously ill or, worse because of this. But for most of us, this is going to be a time of, in the grand scheme of things, minor inconveniences, right? Like, just a little bit different. We got to adjust our schedules. We got to adjust the way that we do things. I mean, Steve and I, we love doing this podcast. Typically every Friday night and sometimes also Saturday nights, we go down to the studio once the kids go to bed, and we get to talk to a new dad at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. And I mean, I know I just enjoy the hell out of that. Like, it's a good time to get away, and we get, it's better than going to sitting in a bar. I was never really a sit in a bar type guy. But now we've got to do stuff like this. And yes, would it be better if we were all in studio and sharing a drink? Yeah, 100%. But like, we're learning how to do this, and we can still get at least some of the result of what we get out of it, hopefully what our guests get out of it, and then what our listeners get out of it. We can still provide that content, I guess. So it's been interesting.
For sure.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we're all learning. We're all learning. We're all trying to figure this out. Who had heard of Zoom, before this?
Right.
Yeah.
I hadn't.
Yeah, I haven't either.
And it's just, it's done a couple things, right? It's getting kids out is important. We've seen that. We do hope that they pick it up. We did have Sega Genesis and N64, and we had that stuff. But I had the same experience as you guys. I mean, I was on my bike all day. We used to ride our bikes to Great Lakes Mall. I mean, or we'd ride our bikes. I grew up in more South Menor. I went to Hopkins Elementary and Memorial and all that stuff. So we were riding out there, or we'd ride over to my friend's house. We played baseball all summer and stuff like that. So you do worry that the kids are missing out a little bit on that. The real unfortunate thing right now is all the spring sports being built. Baseball, softball. My daughter played softball for 4 years. Coaching, I love coaching. I mean, I'd rather, if I could coach full time and make money doing that, I probably would.
What do you coach? Softball?
That's kind of the unfortunate part about it. But trying to get them out and doing more is important. But yeah, love coaching, love softball, and
that's cool.
Hopefully we can get back to that soon.
I know, man. The sad thing is, I drove by. So I'm in Willoughby. I drove by Daniels Park today, and the baseball field down there. There's 2 baseball fields, and with no one working, no one playing on them, that field.
Oh, is it awful?
75% of it is grass. It's all overgrown. The infield has grass. It's not a grass infield.
Wait, hold on. The city of Menor has been building these freaking retaining walls that are strictly decorative along the Route 2 entrances on 615, and I've been driving by them. I'm like, how are they still working? So you're telling me that we can build retaining walls for flower beds along?
Well, you still see a lot of the landscaping companies.
Right, but they're state employees. The state trucks are there. They're state employees.
Yeah. But they're not taking care of baseball fields.
But yeah, they're not taking care of the fields? It's a shame.
I guess it depends on where they're at, maybe.
Yeah, that's Menor versus Willoughby, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know. I know that those fields get used constantly. I mean, I drive by in the summertime. Those fields are there's always games on them. But the leagues aren't starting. No. I mean, there's no one. It is early yet. It's still April. But
that's true.
I feel like this time of year, there's never been grass on that field.
Right.
So I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, that is weird.
It was sad. I was like, damn, man, it's weird.
Glenn,
but like you said, the spring sports too, Glenn. We've talked about this on a couple of the past episodes. Most recent was these kids, and I guess at all age levels, but high school though, seniors, missing the winter sports didn't get to finish their playoff, the state playoffs, and then baseball season, softball, lacrosse, track, all that stuff. These seniors will never get to finish out their high school careers in their sports.
You know what? It's not even really about not finishing out. It's, to me at least, it's well that, but not getting to have the experience of this is my last game.
Yeah.
Like, you can't prepare for that because you've already played it. Like, that sucks.
I think there's some hope for spring sports. Maybe not a ton.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to oversell it, but I think there's some hope for spring sports. I mean, even at the major college level, like I'm such a huge college basketball fan, and I've watched a guy like Andre Wesson for 4 years at Ohio State. It's not quite like watching Aaron Kraft for 4 years at Ohio State, but
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Andre Wesson for 4 years at Ohio State. You do become invested in that team, and I like college basketball more than the NBA for a lot of reasons, but it was. I was telling my dad the other day, we've lived without the start to a baseball season before, right? 1994,
Right?
the
94.
strike,
Yeah.
and 1995, I should say, was the shortened part of the 1994. The end of the season was canceled. 1995, the beginning of the season was delayed. Never lived before without an NCAA tournament. Never not,
Yeah.
put on a bracket since I was in fifth, sixth grade.
Yeah.
And for the winter sport athletes, and I saw an interview with the Menor seniors. After they win this huge game, nobody's in the stands. That's weird enough.
Yeah.
They win this huge game. They think they got a shot at another state title. Maybe Coach K gets another one, and to have that kind of taken away from them. I really feel for the high school seniors. And I mean, even my daughter, she was in a play through St. Ignatius, Mamma Mia. They for the female parts, they pull from both Magnificat and St. Joe's here on the west side. I mean, those seniors who worked for 4 years to maybe get the lead in a play like that. The basketball players, like we talked about, and now the baseball players and the softball players who
golf.
There's no closure there. There's no closure for Andre Wesson. There's no closure for Chacon, or there's no closure for any of these winter sport athletes. Maybe the spring sport athletes do on a shortened schedule, but that's certainly not guaranteed either. And they'll remember that for the rest of their lives, and it will be something that they'll kind of have to shape. But maybe it shapes them in a way. I don't know. Teaches them, hate to be cliche, teaches them what's more important, whatever the case may be. But you got to feel for these seniors who are losing out on their last performances, their last games, their last shot at a state title. It really is heartbreaking.
Well, and like you said, like to try and take a positive out of it is hopefully it teaches people, whether that's high school athletes or collegiate athletes or adults or whatever. This whole thing is try to not take for granted what the opportunities that we have, right? Because you just don't know. Like no one saw this coming. No one ever thought this was a reality. I mean, I know from like a business standpoint, I've gone for a couple of years now where we've been pretty comfortable and haven't really made a whole lot of changes. We've just been kind of sticking to our game plan. And now it's like, rug's pulled out under us and we got to figure out what to do. And so we're putting our heads together to try and adapt our business model and everything. But, we're trying not to, like, from here on out, let's not take for granted. Let's not get too comfortable because things can change, like, really freaking fast,
It's amazing how the dominoes fell. And I was kind of hoping we would get into this because, I've been thinking about it. It was so surreal. And I think Steve just said it's like a movie. This is like science fiction a little bit.
Yeah.
But if you think back to just a couple things. If you think about St. Patrick's Day, right, and the opening day of the baseball season, I feel like Mike DeWine knows Ohio well enough that St. Patrick's Day and opening day, we all know what happens on St. Patrick's
Major holidays. Right.
We all know what happens on opening day. And I don't think the timing of that in Ohio was necessarily a coincidence. I think they kind of saw it was coming, and hopefully they got out ahead of it. But man, other than Chicago, maybe Boston, there aren't too many other places that do St. Patrick's Day quite like Cleveland.
Yeah.
Yep.
And when you think about Cleveland and Cincinnati for opening day, Cincinnati's a huge baseball town.
Oh yeah.
These are the things we look forward to every spring, but these are also the times when we jam hundreds of thousands of people downtown in a very close proximity. So I think the timing of this, it's unfortunate because for a lot of people, it's their favorite time of the year. It is a great time of the year. But those two events and the way that, like I said, the dominoes started to fall once Rudy Gobert tested positive, and everybody on the Utah Jazz basically has to quarantine, and so does Oklahoma City. Now you don't have an NBA.
Yeah.
You can't have a league with two teams quarantining.
Right.
And 24 hours later, everything is shut down.
Yep.
Yeah. You're right.
It happened. It really did happen within the span of about 24 hours where
so quick.
we went from having, we knew it was coming, right? But we went from having everything that we were still used to, all of the distractions, all the pro sports leagues. We thought maybe they'll play the NCAA tournament without fans. That'd still be cool, right?
Right.
Yeah.
To 24 hours later, it's like, bam, everything's shut down.
Yep.
Done. Everybody go home. It was a shock to the system, and that was very surreal.
Absolutely. Man, it was so crazy. And then like you said too, like the big events that everybody looks forward to in the spring. Then you look at New Orleans with Mardi Gras, and you look at spring break, and those things still took place, and those things ended up being bad.
Pretty detrimental.
Because, I mean, Mardi Gras, obviously, New Orleans, Louisiana is like having it's bad
terrible.
there. And then you have Florida was terrible. I mean, it's like, so that call to cancel that stuff, it sucks, obviously, but good thing it happened. Good thing they canceled everything because, like you said, all those people in close proximity, that would have been a nightmare.
Well,
it could have ended up being terrible.
DeWine and Acton and really Ohio in general is getting a lot of credit for kind of getting in front of this thing, and as we should. But you're right. I guess I didn't really think about all of that stuff that was like a major decision to say, it's either now or we're going to be in a really bad place. And I didn't really put that together until you just said that. That's I guess that really hasn't been talked about, at least, from what I've seen. It makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. I just don't think the timing was a coincidence.
Right.
It's and I think there was a situation where they came out and they had warned everybody, and the Saturday after, they got a lot of reports saying the bars were still packed and stuff like that. But I just think St. Patrick's Day and opening day were the two big things where they looked at that and said, we can't have that. So, hopefully, right, the result of that was there was actually a lot of good news this week.
Mm-hmm.
When you want to talk about the modeling and those numbers being revised downward. Also, like in Ohio, we're so lucky. We don't even think about this too much. We put too much of our civic pride into like the Cleveland Browns and not enough civic pride into our hospital systems, right?
Right.
The Cleveland Clinic, UH, Metro, they were able to, respond to the challenge. So the good news is if we're worried about our parents, we're worried about our grandparents. They came out this week. They said they think they have enough ventilators, and not only for anybody who needs them. And they think that the hospital capacity, a couple weeks ago was at like 75%. Now it's at 48%, and they're anticipating building that out even further. So there's a lot of good news. Had you allowed, opening day wouldn't have happened anyway, right? Because
baseball that would have been
down.
But St. Patty's Day was right there, right at the beginning.
It was like 2 days.
Yeah.
I mean, you were 2 days short of, even though you had warned people, you were 2 days short of having pretty close to a typical St. Patrick's Day. Not only downtown, but I know you guys see it in Menor and on
downtown
the east
Willoughby.
Side. On the west side here, it's no different. You go from Cam's Corners through River into Westlake. We've got a Hooley House out here. We've got, everything is packed on St. Patrick's Day. We could have had a normal St. Patrick's Day, and I don't know if we would have had that much good news this week.
Because
Absolutely.
You don't know, but it's certainly that's one of those situations where they kind of had to pull the plug and make it official.
Well, and you're right too, because the St. Patrick's Day thing was still early enough that there was, I think, a lot of, I don't want to say doubters or naysayers, but I don't think any of us knew how serious that this could get, how like that quickly,
Yeah,
like
it happened
on a
fast,
national
man.
scale, whatever. So you would, I mean, had they allowed the parade to continue and St. Patrick's Day be normal, it would have been awful. But can we talk about opening day for a second?
Yeah.
How many opening days in a row have we gone to that has been, 42
Cold.
degrees, and then by the time game time comes around, it is freaking snowing. This
Dude.
year, it was like 67 and 68 degrees.
It was the most beautiful day
Beautiful.
this spring.
And it was 3 weeks earlier than we normally have opening day, or 2.5 weeks earlier, because we normally start on a road trip and then come back. And we're like, and I remember bitching about it when the schedule came out last year. I was like, really? We're going to do opening day in freaking March? Like, fine, I'll go, but come on. Like, I hate bundling up just to go to the game because, especially opening day, we start downtown early and we go and, like, I'm not a crowded bar type of guy. Like, I'm not really a huge fan of that. But I
That's the one day you
love
can
it
deal
on
with it.
opening day. I love it on opening day because everyone's just happy, right? Like, we're talking about the
Yeah.
tribe and we're high fiving, and you're talking about what should have happened last year, and if it wasn't for those cheating Astros, 2 years ago, whatever. Like, I miss like I was so excited. Well, we were supposed to do a live show the night before opening day, and so it
Yeah,
was
we
going to
had-
be
That's
a
right.
live show over at Pub FRATO in Concord. And we were going to do a live podcast, and then we were just going to kind of hang out and then meet back up in the morning and go downtown, and it was going to be awesome.
Yeah, that all got canceled.
It's sad. It's crazy when I try not to think about what we're missing. You
Right.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I try not to think about it, but you're right, and I mean it smacked you in the face on opening day when the weather was great, and some of the games they might have played, might have been a little unpleasant, but we've had some really good weather. We had perfect days for baseball.
Yeah.
And you try not to think about that, and driving downtown during the day, you're like, man, this just sucks. I mean, this place should be packed with people. We should be talking tribe baseball. You try not to think about it. You try not to think about. I was supposed to be. We were gonna take spring break in Hilton Head. Try not to think about that, right? You try not to think, I wanted to be in Charlotte right now. That's the way we planned it. We were gonna stay over in Charlotte. You try not to think about what you're missing, but it's funny. You're so right, because when the schedule came out, you're like, March 26th, it's going to be snowing, it's going to be 35 degree, whatever. It's going to be awful, like it's been for so many opening days. And this one happened to be perfect, and there was no baseball to be played and nobody downtown.
That's the way it goes, obviously. Yeah, well, and then like you said, you're supposed to be on vacation. Like day after, let's see, Monday coming up, we were supposed to be Ian and I and another family, like our families were all going to be going to Disney on the 13th, and so we've been working on getting our refunds on everything, our tickets. I just got my refund from the airlines, and like we're trying to reschedule the whole vacation again. It's like,
I mean, we put what?
I've been telling the kids. I know they're 4 and 2. Like my 4-year-old's like, "Oh, we're gonna be going to Disney." It's like, "Yeah, buddy, we're
a couple more months."
Yeah, maybe in a little while. One day we're gonna go.
Yeah.
But it's like it's just it sucks. It's an inconvenience, but we'll get there again, and we'll get through it, and it is what it is at this point.
Right.
Plan for late summer, early fall. I mean,
that's what we were saying, like maybe October or something like that, or I don't even know what we've decided, but we'll figure it out when the time comes. And luckily, we were able to get everything taken care of.
Yeah, anybody's kids who has a birthday this month or has a birthday coming up, that's tough for them. It's like you could do something small, give them their presents, give them their cake, give them their little party, and be like, "Hey, you want to have a party with your friends? Hopefully we can schedule something late in the summer, early in the fall." We just can't do it right now. Obviously, be honest with them, tell them, what's going on, and say, hopefully, we don't know, but hopefully later in the summer or in the fall, we'll be able to get together and have that party.
Yeah. We'll figure it all out.
Glenn, one of the spots that we like to hit on our show is what we call a proud dad moment. So no, seriously though, it sounds funny, but when we first started this, we kind of said we were very lucky that we got to, we've been friends forever, and we got our wives are good friends, and so like it just kind of worked out very nice to us, and we had no problem telling each other like, dude, my kid did this, or I did this, and like, dude, I'm so proud. Like we were able to do that. Like, but I think for maybe men in general, but certainly fathers, like we don't always reflect on what we're proud of, and whether that's proud of your kids or proud of yourself or proud of your wife, whatever. But like being proud, I think, forces you to try and replicate something to get to that point, and be happy and empathetic and grateful for the things that you do have. And so we always try and make our guests kind of take a second to reflect on something that you're proud of. And it could have been when you were 21, and it could have been last week. It doesn't really matter. But the point is try and get yourself to think, and then the listeners to think about something that they're proud of.
Wow.
Sometimes
we get heavy enough. Now we're getting
sometimes
really
we get heavy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing. I think, as we've talked about tonight. I mean, looking back, the whole thing makes me proud. How far we've come makes me proud, and all that. I think probably the greatest thing that my wife and I have accomplished is when we talk about my son. He was. It's funny. So he started to have some issues around 18 months. He was talking a lot, and then kind of stopped talking, stopped doing some things that, he just kind of stopped making progress. So we thought, well, this is kind of strange. So we had him checked out because he started kind of freaking out in places and stuff like that. If you met him, you wouldn't be able to tell, but autism is a spectrum, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's kind of like, the way I describe it is he's kind of like borderline. Like and the funny thing is, when we got a diagnosis, the doctors are like, well, he has severe anxiety. And my wife and I were like, okay, and like, we know that. We know,
Mm-hmm.
we know he's wound a little too tight for a little kid. Like, we know that. Like, we're kind of looking for something else. So, he was in a developmental preschool where he had peer modeling, but he was kind of in the middle, right? He wasn't a peer model for the preschool kids, obviously, but he wasn't as severe as some of the other kids who were in the preschool. And he was kind of that middle ground. But we were able to, and again, I go back to my mom being in education. It's just kind of the idea of development and knowing how my daughter was helped, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also kind of having that background and knowing what development should look like. Getting your child any sort of early intervention is the way to go. I know therapy is a scary word. I know that when you hear therapy for a 2-3-year-old, that's kind of a scary thing. And I was apprehensive too. But I was like, okay, let's see how this goes. I'm going to go to the appointments. And then you realize, like, it's just play therapy. Like, mm-hmm. It's really more of a directed play. Mm-hmm. They're not doing anything. It's not electroshock therapy, right? They don't do that with 2-3-year-olds.
Well, and on the other end of it too, it's not them sitting on a couch like
telling them their life story. And
right.
No, because they can't. They're 2 and 3 years old.
Yeah.
So we started getting him in speech therapy. We started getting him in some of these other programs, and I said, okay, he just turned 3. He did the last couple of weeks in a developmental preschool, and in the fall he's going to start as a regular, not a regular preschooler, but in this development. And I said, I told my doctors, I said, my goal is to get him in a regular kindergarten when he's in 2 years, when he can go into kindergarten. And through his hard work, I mean, he gets a lot of the credit, right? My son gets a lot of the credit because he took to it. But for a lot of dads, right, take that leap, okay? Take what you're unfamiliar with. Say to yourself, I'm going to go check this out. I'm going to see what this is about for myself. And hopefully you get the right providers, you get the right care, and you say to yourself, oh, this is just directed play. This isn't therapy. Like, this isn't therapy. This is a directed play. Early intervention is so important. And it was great to have him make the progress that he made, and to be able to be in regular, St. Raphael's Catholic school kindergarten and be high achieving. And he's going to be shy. He's going to be anxious. But you do with that what you can. I mean, he's, like I said, if you met him, you wouldn't be able to say, maybe he's a little shy. He's not the typical rambunctious 7-year-old kid who's tearing things up and things like that. But I feel like that was such an important moment for us and for me as a prideful male, right? You say to yourself, okay, well, here's something I don't quite understand. Let me go see what it's about. And as long as things check out, let's continue with it. And just that whole saga, that whole experience for me in dealing with a kid who had anxiety and dealing with a kid who was, borderline autistic, and it gives you a lot more respect. I'm sure both of you can speak to this, but to see the kids that are severe, and to see the kids that really need a lot of that help, and you get a variety of parents, unfortunately, at the helm there. So always try to be that parent. You don't want to be overzealous, of course, but always try to be that parent that is going to do the best thing for your kid, and to go check out, what is this about? What is this physical, whether it's physical therapy or speech therapy or whatever kind of therapy it is, go check it out. Make sure that it will work for you and for your family. But I would just say, don't hesitate to go check that out, and you will not regret it. Go with your gut. You will never regret checking out something like that. If you have questions about your kid's development, you won't regret it.
I like that. That's important. That's very important. I mean, that's huge, because I have a son who's very shy, and like the same thing. I feel like he's got anxiety and things like that. And actually, a couple months ago, we were looking into places to go check it out, just to go make sure everything was okay. We were actually had more things scheduled, but obviously things got a little weird here in the last month or so. So, but yeah, you're right though. I mean, for, like you said, like the prideful male, like it's like, oh man, there's probably nothing there, but it's like, why not get it checked out? And why not find out how you can help your child and help yourself, and just try to get it all figured out and see if there is something there, right? I mean, instead of ignoring everything and be like, oh, we'll figure it out down the road, let's just forget it, see how it goes. Like,
you guys, Glenn, I don't think that you could have brought up a better proud moment, especially from my point of view. So given what I do, and I'm here to tell you, it's not just men who are too like proud or think that it's weird. Like, early intervention, like you said it perfectly, it is one of the most important things. That if there's even a question, and here's the thing is, so most families have some sort of childcare, whether it's the neighbor down the street, or it's grandma, or it's a childcare center like we have. I can't tell you how many times we make referrals based on our expertise, because we'll say, okay, we need more. Like, we need help. You guys need help. Like, let's do this together. And we work. And people are like, you don't know what you're talking about. That's not my kid. We're like, come on. And it's so frustrating as a provider and as a caregiver to hear, I guess, the closed-mindedness of a lot of parents. And I just wish that the message that you just said would get out to people, because it is so incredibly important. And it is mostly structured play that they are then observing and making notes and saying, okay, well, what are the things that we want to work on, and how do we get there? And what are the steps that need to be taken in order to get your child the best education and development that they can have? And we have such talented people, um, selfless talented people that do the job of early intervention specialists and speech therapists, and you know, I could go on and on and on about the amazing people that we get to work with at other agencies, and whether it's private or public. Um, I, Wonderful message. I
Yeah, that's
can't
awesome.
be more happy with what you just said. Like, again, the childcare world is just so important, and it kills me sometimes.
It's about it, and it's tough. Like, man, my wife and I still talk about being in some of those waiting rooms, like I mentioned, with some of those kids who are more severe. And unfortunately, there is a variety of parenting, and there's a variety of oversight, there's a variety of care. Um, and you just wish every kid could have that great support system, right? Well, unfortunately, that's really not in the cards for every kid. But I would stress to anyone listening out there, make sure that it's your kid, right? Make
Right.
sure that if you do have questions, trust your gut. Now, I mean, I've heard that a lot. I've heard, like you said, Ian, I've heard well, he's just not a talker. Or, well, we knew so-and-so and he didn't start talking until he was 4 and now you can't shut him up. Oh, that may
Great.
be true.
Yeah.
But that's anecdotal, right? That's
Mhm.
not empirical. That's not statistical. And I don't like to be a slave to statistics or anything like that. But at the same time, if you do have questions, trust your gut. And I've heard, I had probably a bad example, but I had a friend say to me one time, he's like, well, yeah, my wife tried to put him in therapy, but I put a stop to that. And I said, well, why? why would you do that? And I said, well,
Yeah.
here was my experience. And again, it goes back to, not everyone is that fortunate. Not everyone has the right health care. Not everyone can afford that. Not everyone has the time for that. But I would say, to the extent that you can afford it, to the extent that you do have the time for it, those are things to pursue if you have the questions. It really is just directed play. They're experts. Ian, like you said, there are people who basically devote their life to this.
Whole lives.
This is their expertise, like I do with journalism, like you do with childcare, like Steve does with sales, like whatever the case may be. Think about your profession, okay, and then think about these people who are trained and who are now dedicating their lives to trying to help your child. If you have the means and the resources, or to the extent that you do have the means and the resources, why not give it a shot?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Well, and the
to
wonderful
lose.
thing is,
Absolutely nothing to lose.
Everything to gain.
Well, and just to kind of expand on that is, I'm somebody who will quite often bitch about early childhood education resources. Of course, it's my industry, so I'm a little sensitive to it, and I think that, lots of public dollars should be funneled towards our industry because I think it's necessary and so incredibly important. But what I will say is what we have done a good job in is, especially when it comes to early intervention, and there are so many resources out there. I mean, I could name off a dozen different resources in Lake County for that people can take advantage of. Like, there is literally no excuse if your child, or if you need help with how to make sure that your kid is getting the most developmental resources that will be good for them. I didn't really say that correctly, but I think you get the drift. Like, there's so many resources out there, and that's one of the things that I take most pride in, is when we refer and we work with these agencies, or we work with these private companies that do things, and we make a match and we see the progress in a kid. Like, I mean, it sounds corny, it sounds cliche, but like, that's what I love. I love seeing the kid in second grade doing a play or doing, playing sports in second grade that we had as a 3-year-old. And we're like, dude,
Sure.
look at that kid. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That was the coolest proud dad moment I've heard yet.
Well, Ian, let me ask you a question since
Yeah.
you guys have asked so many. So, in your mind, do you feel like the majority of the time, I mean, not every situation is the same. Of course, everything is different. But the majority of the time, do you feel like it's a lack of awareness about those resources? Or do you think the majority of the time it's kind of a refusal or that closed-mindedness that we talked about? Or is it a split?
Well, I can only speak to my experience, which is so when I go through it, it's that we are currently caring for a child. And what we'll say is whether it's a developmental or behavioral or some issue, we have a process, right? And we'll have conferences, and then we will, we do our own kind of assessments that are monitored by the state and everything. It's kind of a standardized thing, but
And just for people who don't know, that's the same way it works with a lot of school districts.
100%.
Too. They do
Yep,
their own
exactly.
assessments.
Our stuff actually. So we participate in a program called Step Up to Quality, which the theory behind it is that we're doing this now to not only train kids about how they're being assessed, but then also train parents, so that way it follows them through, and then we can see patterns starting at 6 weeks old versus prior to, we were starting at 5 or 6 years old when the kids are in kindergarten. Now we're starting as early as 6 weeks. And so we're gathering much more data in order to provide the best possible care as a system. So I would say, to answer your question, the only thing that I know is when we make referrals or we have conferences with either a concerned parent or a teacher is concerned based on their expertise that says, it might be a toddler teacher or a preschool or pre-K teacher that says, look, so-and-so is struggling with this. We have data to back it up. So we have, every quarter we do specific assessments. And so we'll bring that data to the parent. And so it's not a lack of resources or knowledge of resources in our case, because what we do when we have those conferences and we'll kind of talk in our office and say, okay, what do we think is the best thing to put out there? And then we give them the information for everything. We go as far as to say, like, we're a little bit different in that we've built these relationships to where we can actually have people come into our centers. So a lot of times, and especially in the borderline cases, we can have specialists come in and observe the entire class. And so we sometimes that helps to relieve stress from the parent or relieve denial from the parent, because we're like, well, look, we're having this so-and-so come in for the entire class. They come in and they get hours, because they get hours for observations and things like that. And so I don't think it's it's not a lack of access to the information. Now, whether or not parents actually take the information in and take it as seriously as I think that they should, that's hard to tell. But
on a percentage, I'm sorry. Let me, because
okay.
now I'm in journalist mode. As a percentage, how many parents take the advice and take the initiative and at least start the process?
We get about, I would say 60 to 70% will start the process. But mind you, when we first started building these relationships with these other entities, it was kind of this is what we recommend. And we've kind of changed our business model because our goal as a business is to provide the best possible care for your children, right? Like, that's what you're paying your hard-earned money for as a parent, is to make sure that they get the best possible care. And if we can't do that, then we won't keep you enrolled. And so we've kind of now changed our business model to say, look, if we decide in our estimation, that there's something that we think needs to be looked at. And now, to be fair, this is usually in a behavioral situation. If we think that somebody needs to step in based on safety and things like that, we will basically, I don't want to call it an ultimatum, but we will strongly urge. And if it doesn't happen, then we simply withdraw the student, which we hate doing because it's not the best thing for the child. But if parents don't play ball, then it's not fair to my teachers, and it's not fair to the rest of the kids in the class to have to do that. And so those are really, really difficult situations. I would say 70 to 80% of parents, once we explain everything, and usually we can have them come into our centers, and so it's not as, I guess it's not as intimidating as a meeting. As like you said, sitting in a waiting room and waiting and things like that. We can have them come to our centers, and a lot of times that is a good median, I guess, into getting the care for these kids. So,
Yeah, that's honestly a little better than I thought. I mean, if you would have asked me, I probably would have guessed, 50-50. And I think the other interesting thing that came out, just kind of thinking about what you were saying, and we talk about this quarantine and what Governor DeWine is saying and all this stuff. You guys, I think based on what I heard there, I mean, you're a mandatory reporter, right? In the sense that
sure.
If you see something that's wrong, especially if it's something that you think may be criminal,
Mm-hmm.
you are obligated to report that.
Sure.
And this is Child Abuse Prevention Month. And I think that we forget, it's easy to forget, right? Because we're wrapped up in what we're doing, and we're trying to do the best for all of our kids and things like that, especially during this crazy time. But we try to make our homes the best we can for our kids. And unfortunately, that is not the situation for every kid out there. And yes. Even Governor DeWine said a couple days ago, reports of child abuse are down. And I said, I think it's fair to say that we know that child abuse itself is not actually down. The reporting of child abuse is down. Because of the lack of mandatory reporters who are seeing the kids every day.
Sure.
Yeah. And it's a shame to think about, but it's so true.
Well, child abuse typically is not going to be self-reported.
Exactly. So the parents are going to be like, yeah. So that's why, I mean, obviously why it's down then. Because like when they're being sent to daycare and the daycare center or like school sees how these kids are acting or sees some type of physical evidence of any type of abuse, like you said, like Ian's reporter, like you got to report that. Mm-hmm. So without that, with these kids being stuck at home with no escape of like this abuse or not being taken care of properly, like where school or daycare is the escape for them to be taken care of properly. That's not there anymore. So that's what's very scary and very sad when you think of it, because none of the stuff's being reported. And like you said, like in our households, like I say probably it's safe to say that our kids are pretty well taken care of. So sure. It's easy for us to not have to deal with that kind of stuff. But these poor kids that are dealing with this on a daily basis, it's just very sad and scary that you don't know what's going on. And I mean, well, you do know, what's happening, right? But you just have to be reported.
Man, that was the first thing that I thought of when they made the order to close childcare centers. I mean, the schools was one thing. And I think that, again, not with childcare being my industry, I'm a little more sensitive to it. But when they closed the daycares, now we closed earlier than we were mandated to, just from a health and safety standpoint. But because we knew it was coming. But when things like that happen, I mean, I worried about a lot of kids. I mean, a lot of times school is where kids eat. I mean, we're very fortunate in the area that we are, but there's still, I mean, Lake County still has a very high poverty level to where, I mean, there's kids that's where they eat, Yeah. I mean, every school district has a lunch program that most people don't even know about, where kids can go pick up food for the weekend. You know what I mean? And so now luckily through resources like the United Way, and it's called End 68 Hours of Hunger. There's some good, and then of course, Ohio keeping the resources available so that schools could provide lunches. So the resources are there, which is great. It's just not the same because you just don't know how many families are taking advantage of that, or even have the means to take advantage of that, right? So
Yeah.
but yeah, from a nutrition standpoint, and from an abuse standpoint, and from a structure standpoint, I worry a lot about these kids.
Yeah.
And it's I think the other important thing to mention about during this time, something I've thought a lot about even weeks ago, was this is one of those periods in time where the gap is going to widen, right? And it's unfortunate, but it's reality. The gap is going to widen. We have to make sure we do two things. One, that we stay on the right side of that gap, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't want our kids to fall into the learning gap. We don't want our kids to fall, obviously, into any of the other gaps kind of that we're talking about. So we want to keep our kids and our family on the right side of that gap. At the same time, to the extent that we're able, we want to support those organizations that are helping the kids on the other side of the gap.
Right.
Yep.
And that is kind of everyone's responsibility.
Sure.
Everyone who has the means. We can't. There are certain things we can't legislate, right? There are certain things we can't control. But as suburban dads, to take on the name, it's our job is twofold: is to keep our kids and our family on the right side of that gap, and make sure that even as that gap widens, as unfortunate as it is, even as that gap widens, we're keeping the ones that we love and the ones that are within our control on one side of the gap. But at the same time, we want to support people like Ian. One of my favorite charities is the Providence House in Cleveland, which is a nursery that, first it was the opioid epidemic that just walloped them and has walloped a lot of these kids and walloped a lot of the people that we know and love.
Sure.
Yeah.
But now we've gone from the opioid epidemic to this unemployment and this economic problem and this situation where if you're not in a good, if there's not domestic tranquility, right? If you're in a tough home, it's only going to get tougher. So we're trying to keep who we love and what we can control on the right side of that gap, and then on the other side, to the extent that we can, if we're fortunate enough to still be working, whatever way in terms of money or time that you can support these organizations that are trying to help, at least you can't close the gap. I don't want anyone to think that the gap can be it can't be closed overnight. It can't be closed, but anyone you can help kind of move closer to the other side. It's so crucially important.
Absolutely.
It really is. And I think you're right as dads, because, earlier you made the comment that, it's super cliche and I'm not really a big fan of the term takes a village, right? But in some cases it does, right? And I think when you talk about closing that gap, right, that's where it does take a village.
Sure.
Politics aside, whether there's taxes, there's things like that are going to at some point support these organizations, but it's not even close to being enough.
Yeah.
We need to figure out ways to really support our community, because it's just better for everyone. It's better for these kids. It's better for the next generation. I think that's a very solid point. I don't know how else to say that.
I don't want to be misconstrued or misunderstood. I think the personal responsibility side for your own family, right, and for your own kids is extremely important.
100%.
In my mind, I don't want to think, well, it doesn't take a village to raise my kid. You know what I mean? And maybe I don't know how. But at the same time, you don't have to go far. And I think getting back to having a 14-year-old, right, it's kind of hard to we have her involved in certain things and helping out and things like that. But I've always struggled with her and some of her I don't know if entitlement issues is the right word or whatever, but what I've always struggled with her is like, you don't know how good you have it. And without that perspective, it's tough to raise a kid. So how can we, without scaring our kids, right, or without making them feel guilty, how do we let them know that there is this other side? It's like, her name is Lily. Like, Lily, I can drive you 15 minutes, 20 minutes from here and show you some real world problems that you're not totally aware of right now.
Yeah.
And I think now that she's in high school and she has some, different kind of kids that are coming into Magnificat, I think her eyes are starting to open to that a little bit. But they don't always see that side of it, and it's tough as parents to say, well, they don't appreciate what they have. They don't have our perspective. They don't know what we know.
Yeah, but we didn't either.
We almost try to protect them from that,
But we didn't either,
absolutely.
right? I mean, we grew up in Menor, right?
We're all from Menor. So,
we didn't have that perspective. I remember when I went to boot camp. So I went to the Marine Corps, like 2 weeks after, like a month or two after, it was a couple of weeks, I think, after graduation, right? And I remember going to boot camp and seeing, I was the only one from Ohio, let alone Lake County, or let alone Menor, and my eyes were so incredibly, like, wide open for the first time. Like, there was kids that were there in boot camp with me that, well, I had to go here, otherwise, I was going to, go to prison or whatever it was. Like, there's just so much that I took for granted that I learned very, very quickly. Like, I came here because I had nothing else to do and I wanted to make sure I could eat every day. You know what I mean? Like, like that's crazy, right? Like 2 months before that, I had no idea.
And it's also a naive teenager, right? Like
Sure.
your parents could tell you everything, right? Your parents could give you all kinds of advice, but as like a naive child, like you're like, okay, well, my parents don't know everything.
Yeah.
And then you don't even catch on to it. And then you get older and you're like, shit, my parents
knew everything.
100% correct, and I should have listened to everything they said. Like, but you think you know everything, so it's like it's tough. And that those teenage years and even a little further, it's so difficult to get them to understand how it really is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know yet because obviously kids are young, but I expect that the best thing that we can do is, another thing that we say all the time, is try to raise good humans, so that way when they get out in the world on their own, or they experience, like you said, 15, so you're in high school now and things are a little bit different, and you're exposed to more people, I guess. If you can raise a good human to be able to handle those situations in a positive and empathetic manner, then maybe that's the best way to prepare them to learn those lessons on their own. Because I think Steve's right. Like, it's the walk 2 miles uphill both ways, scenario, right? Like, no one ever believes that. No one ever believes that. It didn't really happen, so you're full of crap. But what that story is about is you don't know how good you have it. Yeah. And I don't think that can be said. That has to be observed. And so if we can just prepare them to be able to observe in a gracious manner, then we're setting them up to be able to understand that lesson a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Boom.
There's no right answer to that either.
Right.
And that's one of the things I've struggled with most with a child who feels entitled to certain things. And she has a childhood that more replicates my childhood. My wife's childhood was different. She comes from a different family, a different background, a different set of standards. I think that's fair. Different levels of reliability, things like that. So my wife really struggles with my daughter's attitude because in a lot of ways, my daughter has the childhood that she wanted, right? And so it's like there's such a balance there. Like I talked about, you don't want to make them feel guilty. You
Right.
spare them. At the same time, you want them to realize that gratitude is very important and perspective. And it's like, okay, well, let's slow down. Let's stop the huffing and puffing, and let's think about, what we've actually done today, or what we've done this week, or the advantages that you have had. And I think that's one of the biggest struggles for parents with older kids.
Sure.
And who are raising kids from preteen to teenager. That's certainly been my experience.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I mean, it's so hard. And like you said kind of before, there's no right answer, right? Like, you just have to do your best. So I've been doing a lot of construction right now. We're taking advantage of the downtime where our centers are closed, and we're doing some renovations. And so one term that I've been using a lot is do your best and caulk the rest. I kind of feel like that's how parenting is, right? Like, you do the best that you can, and then you find some filler or some gap to come in, and whether that's school or military or, occupation or trade school, whatever that thing is, then that's where your kids are going to go off and learn lessons on their own, rather than hearing it from their parents, because we can only put out the guidance and the information so much. I think, at least this was my experience, is like, I remember getting to boot camp, and within the first 45 seconds, I was like, holy shit, my dad was right about everything. Like, I thought he was a moron, and he was old, and he was like, you don't know how it is these days. Like, you didn't have to deal with any of this when you were a kid. And then I got to boot camp, I was like, fuck, he's right. Like, I think that those gaps, or the caulk in that scenario that I tried to
it works.
say, I think that those other experiences are what really drives those lessons that we give home.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I agree.
Thanks.
Got you, bud. Hey, Glenn, one quick question for you, too, real quick. Sure. What are you drinking there?
Oh, yeah. We didn't even get into what we're drinking. See, that's usually some of the first things that we do.
So, the first problem is that it's empty.
Oh.
Yeah.
The second problem is, now I promise you guys won't be disappointed in me, okay?
I can't, but okay.
Good
See
answer.
what you got.
So, in these crazy times, right, we've got to go with something reliable, something economical, right? So it's not going to be too bad, but it's not Elijah Craig, it's not 1792, okay? I'm a sucker for Bullet Rye.
Ooh.
I don't think there's a better value than Bullet Rye. Before the lockdown started, I got one of those huge bottles, like 1.75 bottles.
Yeah.
For about $50. But I love getting, if I go to a liquor store and they've got Bullet Rye, chances are I'm definitely going to get at least a bottle. If you're asking me for my, I don't know if it's my absolute favorite, but I'm kind of a single malt Scotch guy.
Oh,
okay,
that makes sense.
I like the Glenlivets. I like the Glens, and it's just kind of funny how that worked out. It wasn't really
Glenmorangie, or how do you say that? I don't know how you say that, but I'm not a Scotch guy.
I actually looked that up, believe it or not, a couple of years ago because I got sick. I was like, "What?" It's let me see if I can remember. I think, and you have to say it real slow. It's Glenmorangie.
Glenmorangie, yeah, Morangie, yeah.
Glenmorangie.
But I do like the single malt Scotch. But in these crazy and uncertain times, I've gone with the old reliable, the everyday bourbon, the Bullet Rye. I prefer that to regular Bullet.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, if you're a Scotch guy, you would definitely prefer the Ryes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Bullet's good, man.
I like the Bullet Rye.
Good.
Yeah.
That's
good
good
choice.
Stuff.
Not disappointed at all, man. That's what you like, and that's.
Yeah, it wasn't anything too cheap, but I just economical.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
I was telling Steve, so you can see in the background, I have a little bit of a problem with, it's more collecting than anything. Like, I like to go and get a new bottle, and
it looks like a lot of Weller.
I have a few different Wellers.
There's a good Weller section up there.
Yeah, I've got Special Reserve and Antique and the 12-year.
Wow.
And then when bars and restaurants are able to open back up, I have a locker at Hook and Hoof that we are patiently waiting for our Weller Foolproof to come in.
Okay.
I have it on good authority that it's in Columbus waiting for bars to open so that it can be shipped. And I'm just like,
One day.
But no, yeah, I haven't been in a liquor store in like a month. Something like that. And they're open. I mean, they're essential, which I think is amazing, by the way.
Gotta keep everybody sane.
But I've been trying to do my part and really only go out for essential things. And so I've got enough of a bunker that I'll be okay. So, I'm not really going out.
So the funny thing about this is you think way back to February, we were living in a different world.
Right.
I'm a good Catholic boy, kind of. So I gave up beer for Lent this year. I decided to give up beer. I try to give up beer. I drink so much beer between like Oktoberfest all the way through Christmas ale.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy. And so I try to give it up when the Christmas ale is gone. Well, I feel like they overstocked on Christmas ale this year, and they had Christmas ale into like February.
Yeah.
I was buying this Christmas ale, and I was like, all right, well, I'm going to give it up for Lent. I haven't given it up yet. I'm going to give it up for Lent. Little did I know I was going to be giving up everything else for Lent, like the rest of us.
Right.
But that's part of it. And the other thing my wife likes, and I know this is kind of like a girl drink, but I'm in ways, but I'm happy to provide it for her. Jack Daniels. Okay, you start with a little bit of Jack Daniels with Patterson's apple cider. Stick that in the microwave for about a minute and a half. Both you and your woman will love it.
Okay.
A little apple jack. Now that's mostly for the fall.
Yeah, it's a good fall drink.
It is a good fall drink, but we decided because we're in these times, because I gave up beer, we'll extend it a little bit.
Yeah.
I like a little red wine too and things like that. But
dude, how good is Patterson cider? Oh,
it's so good.
Love Patterson's.
Right before they closed down the everything, like the parks and everything, that last week I took the kids up to Patterson's to go play on that playground. Because usually it's empty this time of year. And actually the store was still open at that point. So I went there and grabbed some apple cider from Patterson's, and I wasn't going to, but Sam's like, I got to get some apple juice. I'm like,
they love the apple juice, yeah.
So good.
If you're there, you have to get it. Also, their donuts are amazing, and of course,
Dutch apple pie.
Dutch apple pie, apple cider donuts. Oh, when's the last time you've been to Patterson's, Glenn? I don't know how often you make it back this way.
I feel like we try to go every fall.
Okay.
And I do think we made it there. I do think we made it there this. And for me, like, it sucks. And Steve knows. Anytime I go out there to play golf, I got to drive like an hour.
Yeah.
Get out there. But it's always worth it. Usually, we try to go to. We do. What's it called? The brunch. First watch. We do first watch.
Oh yeah,
on
Mayfield. Yeah.
And then we keep going to Patterson's. But I was thinking, anytime I go out there and I play at Fowler's Mill or whatever, I really got to start, stopping at Patterson's and at least picking up some donuts and stuff.
Yeah, man.
Anytime I'm on that side of town or anywhere near Mayfield Road, I'm like, man, I should go to Patterson's.
It's so great. And the playground that they've built, they redid it, it's probably 2 years now ago that they redid that playground. But it is incredible.
It's phenomenal. My kids love it.
Oh.
It's so great. And the best thing, too, like I was saying, is outside of the fall or, like, the end of summer, that playground in the summertime is usually dead. Like, I took my kids there a lot this past summer, and there was never anybody else there. It was
so
great, man.
It's like a hidden gem.
I love it.
Glenn, you brought up golf, like, several times now, which is cool because I miss playing golf. I guess golf courses are actually open right now.
Well, I drove past Little Mountain 2 weeks ago, and it was packed.
Was it really?
Yeah. I think you have to walk. They have some
Yeah,
regulations.
you have to walk, and like you have to pay online, and you just like go up, and they kind of give you a go ahead, like they kind of wave
Yeah.
you through or whatever. But I have not been able to go yet, of course. But
So here's what I know, because my dad decided to join quail a couple years ago, so
Mhm.
he's having a blast out there. But here's what I know, at least about quail, and I think a lot of the different courses. Some of them you can take a cart, but it's just one man a cart. Like
Yeah.
everybody has their own cart. There are no so there are flagpoles, but you're not allowed to. There are flag sticks, but you're not allowed to touch them. They have the holes like upside down, so you basically hit into the cup, but
So
nobody's
that you're not-
reaching it.
No, you're reaching.
Right.
Okay.
Nobody reaches down into the cup. What's the other one? I'm not sure what they're doing with bunkers. There are a couple other restrictions.
Oh, like the rakes, the bunkers, and things like that.
Yeah,
yeah,
but he's 66 years old, whatever. I think he just turned 66. He says he's walking, he's carrying his bag. He's carried
great.
his bag more times in the last couple weeks than
that's
he has
great.
in the last 20 years. But it's keeping him sane. It's keeping him in shape. They do let you off, I believe, in foursomes, but you're supposed to stay away from each other. And if you want to take a cart, you got to be pretty much, it's just you in the cart.
Yes, we have 4
But
carts.
they are taking precautions. It's easier to socially distance on the golf course.
Sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's wide
Well,
open.
especially the way I play, I'm usually away
I said
from
we're-
everyone.
Yeah, we're in the woods anyway. What difference does it make?
Exactly. I mean, we're not usually good with cart golf, and if you have your own cart, you're good to go, man. I'm usually like a fairway over.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Right, not the other fairway. Yeah.
I don't claim to be good, but man, do I love to play.
Steve, maybe
Yeah.
we should get a hold of Jimmy and see if we can go play.
Yeah.
It'd be
Go
kind of
Jimmy
nice to
Hanlon.
get out. So, Glenn, we did a podcast with Jimmy Hanlon. He
Oh,
came
yeah.
on our show, and it was awesome time. I mean, I love playing at Little Mountain. I mean, I live right between Little Mountain and Quail, actually. So, love both those courses. But yeah, we should
I do
figure out
love
a time.
Fowler's too, man.
Oh, Fowler's is great.
We go there once a year.
Yeah, at
for
least,
an
yeah,
outing.
right.
So, maybe we should try to get out, man. It'd
Yeah.
be so nice.
Well, that'd be fun, when we can do stuff in person, and I guess we could technically do that now. I just don't think that we could actually, podcast from the golf course, especially right now. That wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. But maybe, Glenn, when this is all over, we'll have to play some golf a little bit. And
Yeah, man.
That'd
You're
be
on the
great.
side of town.
Absolutely. Well, you know what you can do? You can do, again, maybe not now, but maybe in the future, just, do short little clips.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Watch me hook one into the woods. Watch Steve slice one into the woods. Watch me miss a 2-foot putt.
Oh, that's me.
Oh man! Every time I have I'll have a phenomenal drive, and as I'm walking up to the ball, I always say, "Watch me screw this up."
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have the best drive, and I'll be like, "Oh my god!"
You can never, and then the next hole you'll have a crappy drive, and then you'll put it within 2 feet on your approach. You're
yeah.
like, wait a minute, why can't I just
It's
put it together?
It's a funny game.
Yeah.
It's a funny game. So okay, so one more thing, because
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I know we're on about 2 hours now. We do
Yeah,
another segment here, quick
Okay.
one. So we did our proud dad moment. So now we do what we call a dad hack, and I kind of feel like you covered a dad hack, but something that works for you with your kids, some type of hack. I don't know. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. If you could think of anything, I'm trying to think of what's a good example. Unless you already know what I'm saying.
I kind of do. Here's the problem with me. Like, I'm so incompetent. So whenever you say like dad hack or suburban hack or whatever, like I can barely do anything. I have almost no hacks whatsoever.
You do, but you just don't realize it.
Maybe that's true. I'm trying to think of hacks with my kids, or easy, like, old reliables with my kids that I can
That's a
kind of
good
go
one.
to, or
It's a good way to put it.
or
An old
ways where I can
reliable.
kind of circumvent some sort of problem. I don't know. Boy, now I just feel like anything I do is like placating them, right? There's a difference between a dad hack and placating them, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, on a deep level, I would say the dad hack that you've already given is to trust other people and not be too proud, like especially with your son. Like, I think that is something that does not come natural, and so I don't want to get back into all of that,
No,
again,
but that's what I was saying.
but I
like,
think
he's
that
already
is a
kinda
good
covered a
hack. Like that is something that, again, what we try and do with the dad hack is say to that dad that he's had a kid for 8 weeks now, and it's been 2 months, but they won't stop crying, and like so stuff that you remember doing maybe with a little kid, or stuff that with your kids now that you're doing, and it could be a COVID specific dad hack. I don't know.
I think man, for me, I almost feel like I'm better with little kids. Really, really little kids. I mean, something as simple as just bouncing them on your knee, throwing them up in the air. Now, you can't always throw them in the air. If they're crying hysterically, don't try throwing them in the air.
Misdirection.
That's a bad dad hack. Yeah, that's a good one. Misdirection, distraction. Shit. I mean, there are toys like the first toys I bought for my daughter. Like they still work for my son. Like, well, they don't still work for my son, but they did.
But at
work
the time,
they did. Yeah.
2, 3, 4 years old. Something as stupid as like a Sesame Street phone, or God, we found this. There are some just kids' toys we'll never throw away because we love having babies here. We love having if our neighbors or our friends. Back when you could have other people over to your house, and hopefully one day you will be able to have people over at your house again soon. And a lot of my friends now are having babies, or some of them are kind of at that intermediate age, but a couple of them are still babies. So we keep baby toys around. We've got this goofy Bert and Ernie tune-up garage, and it's the funniest damn thing. I mean, just listening to the recordings of Bert and Ernie, making their corny Bert and Ernie jokes, and So I guess I would say keep the toys that your firstborn liked as a baby.
Mm-hmm.
Keep those around. It'll work for the second one. It'll work for the third one if you have one, or fourth, or whatever. It'll work for the neighbor kids that come over. It'll work for your nephew and your niece. There are just some toys and some activities that really resonate with kids. And so whatever those are that you have, hang on to them, resist. Now, there's something out here in Westlake called a kitty closet that they do up at the high school and everybody, because it's like a big garage sale kind of.
Yeah.
I'm not telling you not to sell your stuff, because God knows we all have enough stuff to sell.
Oh, yeah.
We can have 1 million yard sales and all that. But there's like 3-4 toys maybe that you probably want to hang on to, that your firstborn loved, that your second one will, and that every child thereafter in that age range will love. Hang on to those toys. You will not regret it.
That's a good call too. So like hand-me-downs, man, like knowing something that works, stick with it. And that's like what we say too is whatever works. And if it works, stick with that one. So I like that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Whatever's that great, like you said, whatever's that great distraction or that great diversion, because all kids of a certain age and beyond, but all kids of a certain age, need that distraction, that diversion. When they're starting to whimper, or you're like, I'm starting to lose them. Go get the tune-up.
Slide it in front of them real quick.
Go get the Sesame Street phone. Go get the dolls clothes. Go get maybe that worked for one kid really well. It's not foolproof, but chances are it'll work again.
Yeah, I like that. Hit it.
I get a lot of satisfaction in that, because typically Steve's running the board. When we're together, he runs the board, so I don't really get to
I'm over there,
button so much.
Imaginary hitting the button over here right now.
I was so excited.
I can see your hand reaching too. You're like slowly reaching for the button. I love it.
Very cool.
Well,
Yeah,
Glenn,
no, I think
thanks,
that's
man.
great,
I mean,
man.
we covered a lot of awesome stuff here, man. You're obviously a great guest, and for someone like you who's in radio and good with talking, this makes it a lot easier, and it's a lot of fun, man. We covered a good 2 hours here of real solid talk, and
Yeah.
you know what's kind of nice is we didn't really get into COVID-19, right? I mean,
We touched on it a little bit, but it was nice to get back to a normal
Strictly dad
episode
talking.
where we're just like talking, right? Like,
Yeah,
I feel like the last couple episodes, and rightfully so, we've had to
that's what's going on.
kind of focus on that, right? And no, you're right. I think this was nice to, I mean, talk with Glenn and kind of get your perspective on things and just almost like a normal episode. But I'll say this, we need to do it again, maybe late summer, early fall, when we can get together and have a drink. I got some good ryes that I'll bring, and we can.
And Glenn knows too. Is I was pushing hard for him to come into Willoughby to come sit. I was like, dude, we'll plan a perfect night. We'll, you can bring the wife. We'll go out and get dinner. We'll have drinks.
Yeah.
And she come hang out at the studio. And then all of a sudden it was like, boom. It was like shortly before all this hit the fan, right? And we're like, now it's like, well, I guess we'll have to do it Zoom. Because I know you being on the west side, it's tough. It's tough you're not out here often, so.
It is, but it would have been great, and again, it's just amazing how quickly things change.
Yeah.
But
it's fast, man.
We adapt, and like you guys said, we did cover a lot of different stuff here, but we are talking about things in the age of COVID-19, and I mean, we're going to be in this for a little bit. Like I said, some good news this week. Hopefully, things will start to gradually get back to normal, and it is going to be gradual. I mean, you're not going to have. It's not like overnight. You're not going to have
boom
200 people in a bar. That's not happening.
Right.
But I hope and I think what you're going to see is restaurants start to reopen a little bit at a time. If they have separate rooms, 10 people in the front, 10 people in the back, 10 people on the patio.
Right.
Almost like you're seeing with grocery stores now.
Yep.
Putting that number on it. I think eventually that's what's going to happen. Some good news this week. Hopefully we get some more good news. But yeah, you don't want to dwell on it, but you also have to face reality too, right? So anytime we can make it up and keep that sense of normalcy, it's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
I think we'll have to plan, like Ian said, like late summer, early fall. We'll do we'll golf. How about this?
Yeah.
We'll golf, and then we'll get together at the studio and hang out, and then we could have a drink and do this again. It'd be awesome.
Sounds perfect. Would love to do it. Had a great time talking with you guys. We'll have much more to talk about in the future, I'm sure, as we come out of this.
Absolutely, man.
Very cool. Glenn, where can people find you if you're into that kind of thing, or anything you want to plug before we sign off here?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, but I do a lot of Twitter for my job. I'm trying to tweet less and less, and I'm trying to tell some of the younger reporters too, like, I want you on Twitter more, but I want you tweeting less, if that makes sense, right? Because Twitter is a great news tool.
Sure.
But it's also where we see we can get into a lot of trouble, and we've seen a lot of people getting into trouble on Twitter and things like that. There's a lot of ways you could lose on Twitter. So, but I am on Twitter. It's at Glenn Forbes 1, pretty easy to find. Check out your public radio station, WCPN.org, 90.3 WCPN. If you are an NPR fan, we'd love to hear from you on our Facebook page, and listen to our local coverage and stuff like that. And hopefully, follow Channel 19 Sports on Twitter. And all that good stuff. But yeah, you can find me on WCPN.org. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, but I'm not much of a picture guy. I rarely, put stuff on there. But you might see. I think what am I on Instagram?
You on TikTok?
Reporter Glenn on Instagram. TikTok, I leave to my daughter. See, this is how old I am. I follow the TikTok account on Twitter. Not I'm not as old. I'm not old enough to follow I don't know if TikTok even has a Facebook, but I spend a lot of my day on Twitter because of what I do. So
Sure.
I follow the TikTok Twitter account.
There you go.
Okay.
No TikToks for me though. I don't like I'm one of the rare TV guys. I don't know if it's rare, but I'm one of the TV guys and media guys who I don't like being in pictures. I'm not necessarily thrilled with being on camera. I look at it as a necessary evil. And to make sure, like, the weird thing about the TV is, like, okay, hide all your wires. You got an earpiece, you got a microphone, you got,
Right.
Hide all your wires when you're on TV, and you got to look good, and, the hair, and you do your own makeup and all that stuff. Putting on, like, that's the other thing. Like, I never thought I'd be putting on makeup, but in the age of HD TV,
Right. You have, yeah.
Gotta put on a little makeup. But
Sure.
no, honestly, thank you for asking. So yeah, WCPN.org, or find me on Twitter, the 19 Sports account on Twitter. Support your local public radio and public TV station. And like I said to start this, like, there's the media gets a lot of criticism. A lot of it's deserved, especially, like, I think we can all think of, like, beat reporters for the Browns or whoever that maybe deserve some criticism.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of good journalists and a lot of good reporting out there in a city like Cleveland. It's not huge, but it's not tiny either, and there's a lot of good stuff out there.
Absolutely, man.
100%.
I'm a big radio guy, so
Yeah.
definitely listen.
Heck yeah.
So,
We appreciate that. The more radio listeners, the better.
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
man.
100%. All right, dude. Well, thank you so much again for taking 2 hours and 16 minutes out of your day to come hang out with us and talk with us. Like we said, we will definitely do something in person, whether it's playing a little golf or having a cocktail and having a conversation too. Whatever. We'll do something like that. But yeah, thank you so much. Keep doing what you're doing. I think that just after talking with you for a couple hours, you're a wonderful father, and I think that you can set the example, and I think that that's great, right?
Yeah, I agree.
That's what we aim to do, is find those dads
I
out
very
there.
much
So
appreciate that. Yeah, I very much appreciate that. As you guys know, I've had a lot of practice over the last 15, 16 years. Had a head start on this more than anyone.
Right.
More than a lot of people. But yeah, for those of you with little kids, you got to get to bed. I got to get to bed too.
yeah,
I know, man. They're going to be up.
Yeah, they're going to be up in like
6
6
hours.
So.
6 hours.
All right, man. I
truth,
appreciate
man.
you so much. Thank you so much, Steve. Anything from you?
No, man. It was good stuff, man. Thanks, Glenn. It was a lot of fun hanging out, man.
Thank you.
All right, buddy.
Yeah,
Stay
let's do
safe.
it
Be
again.
well.
Just let me know.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
You guys too.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, man.
Later, guys.
Hey guys, if you love what you just heard or watched, and we know you did, do us a solid and hit that thumbs up. Share with your friends and throw us a comment, literally about anything. Your support legit keeps us going. Oh, and don't forget to give us that 5-star rating. We really appreciate you.